everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm glad you're here. Today I'm going to show you how to make 3 cards using the June stamp of the month called I Heart Summer. You can get this stamp set for $5 with a $50 purchase, or for free if you're a VIP with a $50 purchase. Okay, so this stamp set has lots of border stamps, and usually they're great for scrapbook pages, but I'm going to show you how to make 3 cards using them. I find border stamps to sometimes be a little tricky for cards, so I'm going to show you 3 designs. Okay, so I'm also using For All Occasions for sentiments, and then I'm going to use Tutti Frutti and the Mix-In collection, and the colors from Tutti Frutti are what have inspired me for the color schemes for all 3 cards. Okay, so I'm going to start by cutting down this piece of Tutti Frutti to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to pull in this flamingo mix-in paper, and I'm going to cut that down to 4 3/4 by 3 3/4. So I'll have the white border of the card base, and then the Tutti Frutti, and then a larger border and the mix-in, and then I'll bring in this dot paper from Tutti Frutti. I'm going to cut that down to about 1 1/4. Now I've got some shimmer trim, so I pulled them in all the colors, and I'm just kind of deciding which color I want to use. Just trying them all out and see what I like. And lemonade is going to be the one. So I'll cut that down to 4 3/4. And then I'll bring in a piece of flamingo cardstock. And I'm going to cut that down to 1/8. And it's going to go in the middle of that strip of shimmer trim. Okay. And then my sentiment piece is going to be cut. It's going to be a square. So I started out cutting it at 3 inches. But then I decided it was covering up too much of the background, so I trimmed that down to 2 3/4 square, and then I'm going to bring in some white daisy and cut that to 2 1/2 inches square. Okay, now we're ready to start stamping. I've got my Misty, and I've loaded this border strip of all different kinds of summer drinks into my Misty, and I have my Brutus Monroe low tack stick mat, and this is great for positioning smaller pieces, because then you don't have to have that magnet, and it gives you a more even stamped image. So I'm just going to set it up so I have 3 of these drinks showing, and I'm using some 3M masking paper. It's a low tack paper masking tape, and I'm going to cover up the left and the right side just so that the other parts of the border images don't stamp onto this. I just want the 3 to show. And then I'll ink it up with black ink and stamp it down. So we'll get that cleaned up and out of the way. And then I'm going to flip over my first mat for more stamping. So I pulled this stamp from For All Occasions, and it says Party Time, and I'm going to ink it up in grape ink and stamp it down. And then instead of inking it up again, I'm going to huff on it for a second gen, and then huff again. Just go, and the moisture from your breath will re-moisten the stamp. And then I have a 3rd generation, so I've got an ombre look from light to dark. Okay, and then off camera, I've colored in those little drinks with tri-blend markers, and now it's time to assemble. So I have a card base, and then I'm just gonna put everything down with Tombow tape runner. I don't know if this is boring for you to watch or not, but just you can see the basic assembly of how the card comes together. Then I'll layer in all these pieces, and shimmer trim is self-adhesive, so I'll place that down, and then I'll layer that tiny strip of flamingo cardstock over it with some wet glue. And then I have my sentiment square. We'll layer that up, and then I'm going to attach it with foam tape. Okay, and then for the last step, I'm going to add some of these wild berry gems. I think they're close enough to the color scheme that they just have add a little pop to the front of the card. I'll just scatter a bunch of those around. Okay, and there's my finished card. So you can take portions of border stamps and create little image panels. Lots of fun. Okay, next card. I'm going to use the other side of this Tutti Frutti and then also that flamingo mix in again. So I'm going to cut each of these down to 3 by 4. These images in this stamp set, they're great for summertime birthdays or invitations for pool parties or just a fun celebration card. Okay, and I'll cut that piece of lemonade. It's the light side of lemonade. And cut that down to 1 by 5, and then some grape and some white daisy. Two by 3. And then I'm going to cut a small piece of white daisy at 3/4 by 1 1/4. And I'll also have a portion of the zip strip in there. So I've loaded this other stamp into my MISTI, and it's got lots of summertime toys like pool floaties and sunscreen and sand buckets and an anchor, and I'm going to ink those up. So I'm placing it so that I'm going to make a whole panel of images. So I'm placing it in my MISTI so that just a couple of them will stamp out at the bottom of this white daisy panel, and then I'll move the panel around and stamp a couple more. I keep shifting it to make sure I just get a couple of those little images, and I'm inking it up in mint ink. So it's very subtle, and it's just going to kind of be a background piece. And then I'll shift the cardstock around again and then stamp again. So this whole panel will be covered with those little images. Okay. All right, now I'm going to flip my Versamat over, and I'm going to stamp part of this other strip from the set. And the image on the very left, there are lots of sayings, there are summertime sayings. The image on the left says pool party, and I'm inking that up in grape ink. And I'm going to stamp that so just the words pool party show up on this tiny piece of white daisy. So I'll bring in that 3M masking tape again and mask off part of that strip so that just what I want will stamp down. Okay. All right, and then this bottom strip is a bunch of seashells. So I'm going to stamp them in tone on tone, lemonade on lemonade. And I'm going to cover this strip up with 3 rows of seashells. So I'm kind of making background papers with the stamps. Okay. So now we have all the components for our card, and we can start to assemble. So I have a card base, and this is going to be landscape. So I'm going to place those 2 3 by 4 pieces down and layer them up. And then I'm going to dovetail each of these smaller strips. So just snip vertically in the center and then take each corner to meet that snip. Okay. Center and then right corner, left corner. So that's the zip strip and then my smaller sentiment piece. Okay, so then I decided that my sentiment piece was going to disappear, so I wanted to sponge a little, or this is a sponge dauber, a little bit of Capri ink around the edges just to give it a little more definition. Okay, now we can layer up the rest of the pieces. So everything's going to go down with tape runner, except for my sentiment. I'll pop that with some foam tape. Lots of subtle colors, pastels, and light colors in this collection, but I think they go together beautifully. We'll pop that sentiment, and then we'll add a couple of those wild berry gems. And there's my finished card. The mint background on that panel, it's really light and it's difficult to photograph, but it shows up nicely in real life. You could always choose one of the other colors in the collection as well. Okay, last card. I'm going to use this strip of images that has a swimsuit and flip-flops and sunglasses and Polaroid pictures and cameras, and I'm going to stamp on a piece of white daisy in all of the colors in the collection. So I'm going with a rainbow order of colors, so non-traditional rainbow colors. So first is going to be flamingo, and then lemonade, capri, mint, and then grape. So I'm going to stamp at an angle. So I've chosen two of these stamps. So I picked the first one that I described with the flip-flops and sunglasses, and then the other strip is all of the summertime sayings that it says pool party, summer vibes, hot, 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 fun in the sun. Okay, so the next one I'm going to stamp down is that sentiment strip in lemonade. And then I'll go back to the other image strip, stamp that in capri at an angle, and I'm just going to keep going and switching out colors and sentiment strips and image strips on an angle and cover up this whole piece of white daisy. So then we'll do mint. And then we'll do grape. And then start over and continue on with all the colors and alternating. So I'll skip ahead. Okay, so now we have that whole panel covered. I just chose two of the stamps, and you can always go with more if you wanted to. And then I'm going to stamp out my sentiment that says celebrate in Capri ink. Okay, so I'm going to trim down this sentiment strip and dovetail each end. And then we can start assembling. And I decided instead of using that capri, I'm going to bring in some of the mint mix-in paper. I'm going to cut about 1.25 inches by 3. Just kind of measuring out how much I'll need there. And I'm going to dovetail those ends as well. And it's same basic assembly, so I'll skip ahead in a second. I'm going to bring in a strip of shimmer trim in Capri to kind of accent that sentiment. Okay, so I'm going to place that, I've dovetailed one end, and I'm going to place that below my sentiment. I thought I was going to use that zip strip, but I changed my mind. And then I'm going to add some wild berry gems, and that's my finished card. So here's all 3 of them. So all of these supplies are currently available in my online store. I'll make a list with links in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And then you'll be able to find all of my videos. And thanks for watching.